Good afternoon. Good evening, everyone. And it was Tiger Beetle Day. You know what? The Tiger Beetle is initiated last year in Coimbatore. And on the birthday of Dr. David Pearson, you know Dr. David Pearson about the work he works on Tiger Beetles of the world. Yes, I think so. There's no need to explain more, but some of the new students have joined today. So we have conducted this Tiger Beetle Day in Wildlife Institute of India with the student of Graphic Era graduate students, and we already floated the information on different social media. And most of the people are already a group of seven, and they knows what is Tiger Beetle, what is the importance of Tiger Beetle, and who is working on Tiger Beetle. But I'm happy to see that very good association he has created these different corners part of the India, and large number of young students are also joining and providing the information on tiger beetles of different habitat and biogeographical zone of the country. So without any delay, let now request Dr. David Pearson for his interesting talk on tiger beetles, and definitely our young students will get the benefit out of it. And I request every student you have to interact with all the people who working on tiger beetles and try to understand the importance of tiger beetles and its conservation values now. So I will request Dr. David Pearson for his interesting talk on tiger beetle.
Okay, thank you. It's nice to be here. Good to see you all. So, when I started working on tiger beetles in India back in the 1970s, can you believe it was that long ago? I spent a lot of time in almost all the states of India, but I have to admit that I have to thank, I had many, many friends there and many contacts, but of all of them, my time in Bangalore with G.K. Vidish was probably the most important and the most memorable. He passed away a couple of years ago, but I still have strong memories of him. We used to make fun of him because we thought that the university was named after him, GKVK in Bangalore, and he always thought that was a good thing. But he was one of the few professors that would come out with his students and with me into the field all the time, and we enjoyed that a lot. One story I always tell about my time in India with my time in the Western Ghats of especially Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, in the middle of the monsoon, we'd be at a tea plantation. And it would be late in the evening or late in the afternoon. We didn't have any place to stay. We knew we could drive up to virtually any house on any tea plantation, and they would put us up. It was amazing. And we'd be there, and the people of the plantation would welcome us with open arms. And then, of course, they'd feed us. And I love Indian food. But what happened was the woman of the house would stand over me in back of me. And every time I finished part of my plate of food, she'd put more food on. And I used to say to my students, well, I've had enough food. How do I say enough? And of course, in Karnataka, they'd say, just say beku. And she'll stop. So at the next plantation, I was eating my food and I had enough. And I said, beku. And she kept putting more food on my plate. Every time I said beku, she put more food on my plate. And of course, there were my students on the floor laughing their heads off because saku means enough and beku means more. And I had to learn a little bit of Karnataka, kind of that way. So little by little, they were teaching me as we were going through the field looking for tiger beetles. So let's look at tiger beetles. And I will tell you that my experience in India had a great influence on all the tiger beetle work I do around the world. And what happens in India can have great impact around the world. Here are a couple of tiger beetles just to show you how different they are. These are from India. One that's terrestrial on the left often goes onto leaves when it has to. But on the right, we have an arboreal species, a Derocrania. And again, the wondrous variation amongst the tiger beetles in India and all the number of species makes it a delightful place to study these beetles. They have a range of enemies too, from robber flies to Some on the coast and the beaches have to worry about shorebirds going after them. Here's a young shorebird taking a tiger beetle. So they have their own enemies as well. And of course, over the years, the tiger beetles have evolved ways to protect themselves against their enemies. Here is a Tricondyla, another arboreal species of tiger beetle. It's flightless, but like many other tiger beetles, produces a type of chemical, a defensive chemical called benzaldehyde, which can evolve and turn into a type of cyanide as a protection. If you pick up tiger beetles in India and smell them, you smell a sweet smell quite often. That's the cyanide that's being produced as a protection against the predators, especially against robber flies. Not so effective against birds and other vertebrates, but very effective against a major predator like robber fly. But what's strange, we have a lot of very complicated evolution going on. Look at this tiger beetle, Tricondyla. Look at this tiger beetle, but it's not a tiger beetle. It looks just like Tricondyla. This is actually a cricket that mimics the tiger beetle for protection. It does not produce cyanide, but apparently the major predators of these beetles learn after the first time they try and eat a tiger beetle that produces cyanide, they remember the form and the shape, and the cricket cheats. It looks just like a tiger beetle and gets the protection without having to produce the chemical. Tiger beetles have all kinds of ways to control their temperature. Of course, they're ectothermic, that is, they're cold-blooded. They need external sources of energy to keep their temperature up so that they can be active, very, very active. That's why they're so active in the warm parts of the day. They move very, very quickly, some of the fastest beetles in the world. But when they get too hot, they have ways to cool their body down. And one of them is to stilt, to get up out of the boundary layer of very, very hot air and cool off. They can also shuttle in and out of shade and do things like this, but stilting is one that you'll see commonly, especially towards the middle of the day when they are getting quite warm. Here's a picture that Dr. Unyal took in his studies there in the Himalayas. This is an amazing, we see thousands of, you never see tiger beetles together except like this, when they're roosting together in the thousands, 3 or 4 species all together in the same bush. And we're still trying to figure out why they are doing this. Apparently, it may be in the coolness that keeps them warmer, and it may be that all of them producing a little bit of cyanide can make a big protection against any kind of predator, that they enhance their chemical protections this way. But this is a wondrous view to see. So if you are ever out in the early monsoon, this is what happens in several places. I've seen them in other parts of the world, but never in this numbers. This is the greatest number of any type of collection of individuals during the night I've seen anywhere in the world. And tiger beetles are also very, very effective as a conservation effort because they've attracted so much attention. There are field guides and identification guides for tiger beetles from around the world, from Thailand and Africa, from Bolivia and Colombia to India and the United States and Canada. And what this, of course, makes possible is for lots of non-scientists, for citizen scientists, for people who are not being paid to do this work, will do it on their own, just for the love of it. And of course, we're seeing lots of this going on in India right now with your quests and your use of iNaturalist, where citizen scientists in some ways are doing almost more work than the professionals are doing. But working together, this can make tiger beetles very, very effective. This is probably where tiger beetle taxonomy is going in India. It isn't there yet. We need much more work on India and to be able to look at populations. But many species of tiger beetles have populations that look quite different. They're all the same species, but there are in different parts of their range, there are different factors selecting for different colors. Colors can be warning, they can be for camouflage, they can be for thermoregulation, all kinds of reasons that the colors will change in different parts of the range. So here's a species in North America that has several distinct subspecies. Now we have to be careful with subspecies. They can be overused, but that's probably the next step in tiger beetle taxonomy in India, is looking at variation within a species and looking at different populations to see where they are different, how different they are. And some people may decide that some populations are different enough they want to call them a little bit different names. So we can add a third name to the scientific name we call the subspecies. But it should be done with caution because it can be overused and misused as well. But it's interesting to look at the tremendous variation. Some people might be tempted to call these different species when they first look at them, and until you look at where they come from, look at their overall population, and see that there is a lot of intergrades where they change from one color to another. So subspecies is another place to look for future areas of studies in tiger beetles. And a lot of this is being initiated by looking at molecules. We're looking at DNA and RNA now, as well as morphology and behavior to determine which species are which. And it's getting rather complicated because now we get to situations where we have a population of tiger beetles that look all the same, but the molecules tell us they are different. So externally, these beetles from this another set of species from North America, they look all the same. They look very, very similar until you look at their molecules. And you find out, indeed, these are separate species. We call these cryptic species, hidden species that have been only become possibly apparent through investigation of their molecules, especially the DNA. So that will also be, I'm sure, a next step coming in looking at tiger beetles in India as we do more and more information from their molecules. We need more people trained in that, and hopefully that will happen soon. Here we are going backwards. Okay, there we go. Now, here's a species of tiger beetle. Here's a species of tiger beetle that occurs on dry lake beds, salt flats, and here's the typical adult stage. But we have to look also not just at adults, we have to understand larvae as well to be able to look at not only the natural history, but to understand conservation management practices. We have to know that larvae are extremely important. A species of many adults only live maybe 2, 3, 4, or 5 weeks as adult stage. The larval stage, they may spend months or years or 2 years as the larvae. So in many cases, the larval stage is more important than the adult stage as far as management and conservation. That's where the larvae sits. You can see the head of the larvae in that hole right there. And if you look at a side, this is what's happening. The larval tiger beetles produce a tunnel, sometimes as much as 1 meter deep, depending on the substrate. But the tiger beetle sits at the top of the tunnel and uses a strategy unlike the adults. The adults chase their prey down, but the larvae ambush their prey. They wait for the prey to come near where they are, and they reach out back very, very quickly, grab it with their mandibles, and pull it down into their tunnel to eat it. And here's a vertical tunnel with the larval tiger beetle at the bottom. Now, what are the advantages of being able to go down from the top of the tunnel to the bottom? What behavioral advantages would it be down there? And whenever we look at behavior, we always want to look at both the cost and the benefits. And that's a really good way to understand biology of behavior. There are always costs and there are always benefits. And we should hope the benefits outweigh the cost. So can you think of any reason that would be advantageous for the larval tiger beetle to go down to the bottom of its tunnel? Well, one would be, of course, to escape its own enemies. Another might be for thermoregulation. When it gets too hot up at the surface, it'll probably be much cooler down there. Or if it's raining, or with some other disturbance, being able to retreat down to the bottom of the tunnel may be a very beneficial thing. But there are also costs. Can you think of what our big cost was? The more time the larval tiger beetle spends down the bottom of its tunnel, the less food it can catch. It can't grow as fast, it can't develop as fast, and it's going to if it slows down its development, it's going to become more precarious for perhaps going into the winter or being approached by more enemies. So there are lots of costs and benefits for all of these. Here are some of the enemies of larval tiger beetles. We call them parasitoids. The wasp on the left is a special genus called Methocha. It occurs around the world. There are species of this genus around the world except in Australia. And guess what their only prey is? Larval tiger beetles. They are so specialized, that's all they go after. Now, the way it approaches the larval tiger beetle, it actually comes and permits the larval tiger beetle to grab it around its waist. It has a very hard external chitin, so the larval tiger beetle, unlike its other prey, can't chew this one. This is the female now that's doing this without the wings. The male has wings, but the female Methocha then permits the larval tiger beetle to grab it with its mandibles. And as the larval tiger beetle is pulling this potential prey item down into its tunnel, the female wasp stings and paralyzes the larval tiger beetle. And it happens very, very quickly. So after the larval tiger beetle is stung and paralyzed, the female wasp then lays its own egg on the larval tiger beetle. And a week or so, maybe 10 days later, the larval wasp emerges and begins to consume the larval tiger beetle. And of course, the advantage is the tiger beetle is not dead. The larval tiger beetle is only paralyzed. It's like refrigeration. So it's alive, but it can't move. And it waits then for the wasp to emerge, the young wasp to emerge and start to consume it. Another type of enemy is the bristlefly, the tachinid fly on the right. These are soft-bodied, so they can't do the same thing. But what the female does, the female wasp finds the larval tiger beetle hole and then hovers out of reach above the larval tiger beetle hole and starts to throw eggs at the larval hole. And some of these eggs hit the hole and roll down the tunnel. The larval fly emerges from the egg, crawls up, attaches itself to the back of the larval tiger beetle, and begins to eat it. So these are the main enemies of larval tiger beetles. Here you can see two larval parasitoids on the back of a larval tiger beetle. And what is kind of interesting, we can go around and we can actually dig up larval tiger beetles and we can look at the activity of their parasitoids by finding out how many larval tiger beetles in an area actually have larval parasitoids on them. We can very easily assess the danger from larval parasitoids in different subhabitats, microhabitats, and compare them as well. Just to show you again where it can go, you have termite mounds also in India. Here is one in Bolivia. The adult on the left spends all of its time flying from termite mound to termite mound, and it eats all kinds of insects on the termite mounds. Besides the termites, it eats other insects there. And the larval tiger beetles are so specialized, they are only found on these termite mounds. So we ask, why is it? There's all kinds of soil and ground in between these termite mounds. Why does this species only occur on the termite mounds, and why are the larvae only on the termite mounds? And what would you say? Have you got any guesses? Can you think of any hypotheses that might explain what's the advantage? What's the benefit? What's the benefit? The cost is, of course, there might be a limited number of termite mounds, and there's a lot more soil around. So why aren't they just using the soil, as most tiger beetles do on the surface, to hunt for prey and to put their larvae in? But no, they limit themselves to these termite mounds. Well, it turns out that one of the major factors involved in this habitat, as in India also, is fire, and that these tiger beetles can survive the very common fires that move through here very quickly, very high temperature fires that move through here, by being on the termites out of danger. So there are the costs and the benefits as well. So this is something we might start looking for in India too, to see if there's anything that is specialized in termite mounds there. Another major advantage to working with tiger beetles is that they are relatively well known. For an insect group, they are relatively well known around the world. Now, of course, there are some areas that need more work, much more work than other areas that are more isolated. But look at the differences here. We see here what is called a typical latitudinal gradient in biodiversity. As you move from the equator, the low latitude areas, to the higher latitude areas, we get fewer and fewer species. So most species of almost all plants and animals are concentrated near the equator. And the same pattern applies to tiger beetles. But even around the equator, look at some of the differences. All of Africa has 546 species, but look at the area around Indonesia, the Philippines, and Malaysia, 685 species. Here they have lots and lots of isolated islands where there's been a chance for speciation to occur on islands, and endemic species of tiger beetles on every single island. That can make a big difference in understanding why there are so many more species. Nice thing about tiger beetles is because they've been worked on so long and by so many people, and we have so much information, we also understand the patterns we see with tiger beetles are reflected in many other species, not only of other insects like butterflies, but invertebrates like birds or in plants as well. So tiger beetles can reflect a lot of other species and taxa and save us a lot of time in trying to understand general patterns for conservation management as well. But this view from a global point of view gives us some information, but it also hides information. Because if we look at the pattern of distribution, the spatial pattern of distribution of tiger beetles at a regional, a smaller scale, we get a more accurate, but oftentimes a different look. So let's look at this and call these tiger beetles indicator species. They can tell us a lot about other species at different scales, at global, regional, and local scales. They are, and any good indicator species has to meet requirements. The first requirement is a fairly stable taxonomy in which it's not changing all the time. We know pretty well tiger beetles are still changing as we look at more DNA and get more understanding. But overall, it's a relatively stable, especially for insects, as a stable taxonomy that's pretty well known. Also, their biology and natural history are well known. And you need that because you need, for any kind of conservation management, you have to know what's impacting them. Why is a population declining? Why is a population stable? And you can only understand that by knowing the individual biology and the natural history. Also, being easily observed and manipulated. I started working with birds, and I found out that I could understand a lot of questions with birds, but I couldn't test the birds. I couldn't see what they were eating. I couldn't see their enemies. It was hard to manipulate them. It was hard to do experiments on them. All these things, tiger beetles lend themselves easily to experimentation, observation, and finding good data. And again, those data you find from tiger beetles are often going to be able to be applied to many other taxa as well. Another nice thing about tiger beetles as an indicator species, of the almost 2,900 species, they occur over many habitats, from boreal forest and alpine mountains to tropical forest, to boulders, to logs, to trunks of trees, to sandy beaches. You name a habitat, and there's probably a tiger beetle there. And that makes them also very good and effective as indicator species, because whatever habitat, whatever microhabitat you're looking at for conservation purposes, there'll probably be some tiger beetles there that you can use to indicate what's going on with that habitat. Is that habitat in danger? Is it threatened? Is it stable? And is it well protected? So tiger beetles can very, very readily serve as good indicator species. One that's often not looked at is economic importance. And that's a good one because many times the people who make decisions on conservation efforts are not biologists. They're politicians. They're non-biologists. And they probably have, if no knowledge, maybe no interest in much of the natural world. But once you tell them that the species that you're working with might have some economic impact, that makes a big difference. So looking for economic impact can make a big difference in understanding how a good indicator species can be applied to conservation efforts around the world. Looking at the widespread, but each species specialized, you can see here are two species. And these two species have a wide range. but wherever they occur, the one on the left always occurs up away from the water, and the one on the right occurs right along the water's edge. They separate out very, very nicely. Even though they have a broad, broad range, they're highly specialized in exactly what part of the microhabitat they occur in. Again, we see this in India as well. These happen to be two North American species, but it occurs in India as well. Also really important is understanding that in many, many cases, if you can't measure, if you can't manipulate, if you can't experiment with the species, it's extremely hard to tell you what's going on. Tiger beetles lend themselves very, very easily, not only to laboratory experiments, but to manipulations out in the field. That student in the middle with a fishing rod is actually looking at and testing the effect of tiger beetle color and chemical presence on robber flies that are in the field. He's got a model on the end of a string there on the end of the pole, and he's presenting it to the robber fly to see what the robber fly's impact is on those models when you change the color and the size and add chemicals. So we know exactly what is best for a tiger beetle to avoid predation from a robber fly. The student on the right is looking at an enclosure where we're limiting the amount of food to tiger beetles that are inside that enclosure and understanding what affects their behavior. And the student on the left is doing a feeding experiment, looking at larval tiger beetles and finding out how fast can they develop and what's the impact on their food choice. And do different species of tiger beetles choose different types of food based on size? So these are all the kinds of things that are absolutely vital for understanding the biology of a group of species like this. Now, here is something, these are students I was working with in the Amazon. And again, this is the kind of work we're finding out that is becoming very, very effective, taking students out into the field. If you just leave students in the laboratory, they miss out a lot. So getting students out in the field is very, very important. And being able to train students quickly is important too. So here are students that I've taken out into the very, very complex Amazon forest. They've never seen a tiger beetle before in their lives. And within 5 hours of going out, and I say, there's a tiger beetle, watch that one, there's that species, there's that species. With 5 hours of training, these novice helpers learn to identify 90% of the tiger beetle species along a forest path and gather reliable data. That is incredible. And that is something that, imagine if I were doing this with birds. Are any of you bird watchers? Do you know how long it takes to learn the birds well enough to be able to gather reliable data? At least 5 to 10 months of this very, very intense training before they would have that level of ability. So here's another real favorable aspect of tiger beetles. You can train people to gather data very, very quickly. We also did this experiment. These are with students who have never seen tiger beetles before. And with a little bit of training, we were actually looking at how can we determine populations of tiger beetles on these forests and the forest floor here. This is something we have not started in India yet, but something that needs to be done first, done fairly soon after the initial idea of getting a distribution of where tiger beetles are in India. The next thing we have to do is understand what are the actual population sizes. And the only way to do that is by doing these types of tests. For instance, mark and recapture in the Amazon, where we did this here, and determining what we call a Lincoln index. And it's a way in which you go out, and here we work in groups of 3. There's the catcher, there's the observer, and there's the recorder. So they catch the tiger beetle, and then here we are, we're marking it. And these special poso pens are extremely accurate in marking the tiger beetles. So here's a student from Peru marking a tiger beetle, and here are the marks we put on. You can see the marks right here, the yellow marks. By the way, the tiger beetle in the upper left has a bunch of orange mites, and this also happens in India. These are phoretic mites. They are actually not feeding on the tiger beetle, but they are using the tiger beetle to move from place to place. They fall off the tiger beetle when they move to the appropriate microhabitat. But you can see here we can mark each tiger beetle with its own color marking. The first day, we know how many tiger beetles we marked. We go out the second day and we determine how many tiger beetles do we see that we marked the day before. We're not going to see all of them. Most of the tiger beetles we see the second day aren't marked. So we look at the proportion of the tiger beetles that we found that were marked the first day on the second day. And with 2 days then, looking at the marked and unmarked ones, we see how many the second day we found were unmarked, how many were marked. We get a proportion that we use in an algebra, a very simple algebraic equation, and we can calculate the total population of all the tiger beetles in that local area very quickly. Again, doing this year after year, season after season, will give us a very accurate indication of what's happening to tiger beetles. Just observing and trying to count as you go along doesn't get the job done. We need to do things like mark and recapture and link and index, which is really easily done to determine, is a population stable? Is it going up and down? And we need to do it over a fairly long period because there can be seasonal changes, year-to-year changes. We have to understand that as well. So with mark and recapture, which is easily done with tiger beetles, we can get a tremendous amount of information. And again, if these tiger beetles are indicators and they reflect populations of birds and butterflies as well, we can get the data much more quickly, more accurately, and have a management plan for a habitat in 1/10 the time it would take to looking at other organisms. Because we find out where you find more species of tiger beetles, you find more species of butterflies and birds. So in North America, in Australia, and India, again, just looking at the tiger beetles doesn't just give us information on tiger beetles, it gives us information and predictions on lots of other taxa that are totally unrelated and can save us lots of times in surveying and understanding a habitat. Remember, in conservation, quite often, we don't have time. We don't have funds. We have to get things done very, very quickly because that habitat is disappearing. It's in danger. We can't wait 10 years. So again, using things like tiger beetles can be very, very effective for broad understanding of what's happening in a habitat. Not only know what's happening, having accurate data, and not only having that, but knowing here's exactly what's going wrong. We need to know this is what is causing these populations to go down. And that can then show us very, very quickly, here is what is needed in management to preserve this habitat, to make sure this habitat no longer is in danger. Now, talking about economic importance in what's going on with a good bioindicator like tiger beetles. And we discovered in North India, mainly up around Chandigarh, in the rice paddies, there are a lot of problems growing the rice, and there are a lot of dangers. In India, about 5 to 10% of the rice harvest is lost due to a plague of brown leafhoppers. But there are rice stem borers, there are other insects as well. And these rice stem borers can become extremely common, and they're doing great damage to the crops and, of course, to the economic return from those crops. What we found was that there is also a tiger beetle that likes to come to the moist rice paddies. And that tiger beetle climbs the rice stems and it eats the insects up on the rice stems, including these brown leafhoppers. Well, the female of this tiger beetle also oviposit in the rice paddies, but they don't like the dikes around the rice paddies if they're at 90 degrees. They won't oviposit in them. To oviposit, they need 45-degree angles on the paddy dikes around the rice paddies. So we asked some of the farmers to change the dikes to 45 degrees and left other of the dikes at 90 degrees. What we found was the rice paddies that had 45 degrees all of a sudden had many more of these tiger beetles. More females were attracted, and of course, when more females came in, more males came in. And what were they doing besides copulating and laying eggs? They were eating pests. So without pesticide, without herbicides, without the cost, without the danger, we were able to show, again, this is preliminary data. We need more data on this. So if anybody wants to work on this and we get much more precise data, this is important. So we only have preliminary data, which indicates this is what's going on and likely to be a very usable and controllable and cheap way to take into account plagues of brown leafhoppers and rice stem borers. And you can imagine when we talk to policy decision makers like politicians, this got their attention more than anything else. About all the other things we said about tiger beetles didn't get their attention, but this got their attention. Even though it's preliminary data and we don't have total convincing data that this is going to work, we think it's going to work, we need more data. This was enough to make the politicians say, wow, I want to hear more about tiger beetles. Let's work with them. Again, looking at other ways that tiger beetles can be used, we move from global to regional and we see patterns that were not available at the global level. And another way of conservation is to choose areas that have high species diversity, high endemism, and are also in greatest danger of being obliterated. If you get those combinations, you can select what we call hotspots, hotspot selections, in which, again, we have limited funds, we have limited time, we have limited personnel. How do we concentrate those limited resources? Well, this is the way you put all your efforts into some areas like this that have high species richness, high endemism, and great danger of being destroyed. So the habitats are in danger. Tiger beetles, again, because they are indicators of many other organisms, we can do this type of evaluation quickly. And when you put a grid across the map of India and then connect the squares that have the same number of species, you see a completely different pattern of species richness. These curved lines indicate to us where the highest species richness is, not only of tiger beetles, but of butterflies and birds as well, because tiger beetles reflect that of other species, other taxa. And you see here two very different areas of the highest species diversity, down here in the Western Ghats in southern India, and up here near Bhutan and northeastern India. Looking at that, then we can say, okay, these are the areas and lots of endemism here, lots of endemic species at both these sites, but mainly down here in the south, much more in the south than here in the northeast. And with that, we can look at the distribution of these endemic tiger beetles, where they are, begin to overlap distributions and ranges. And we can look over here, we find these are the areas that we should concentrate on. These are the areas where we should choose our hotspots, not just for tiger beetles, but for other taxa as well. Concentrate our energy and our resources in these areas by choosing these as hotspots. Again, paid scientists are few and far between. If we depend only on scientists doing all this work, it's never going to get done. It's never going to get done. We don't have enough money. We don't have enough people. There's too much to do. But by including volunteers, citizen scientists around the world, and using things like iNaturalist as a way for them to register and record their sightings, their photos, we can start to gather data extremely quickly. It's amazing how much can get done. And as you've seen in some of your quests already that have worked quite well in India, this is being done in Brazil. It's being done in other parts of South America, in Africa, and other parts of Asia, the Philippines, where citizen scientists who have a little bit extra time, have a camera, are able to contribute valuable information very quickly. And together, they can get done in a short time what would take a single scientist decades, maybe centuries to get done. So this is another approach. And how do you attract more people to help out with iNaturalist? How do you get more people involved with this type of work and conservation? Tiger beetles can be one focus. It's not just tiger beetles. Lots of people work in other organisms, but in this case, tiger beetles are important because they garner so much information about habitats and other taxa at the same time, very, very quickly. And here is a species of tiger beetle that I would love someone to find. It was last seen in the late 1700s in southern Tamil Nadu. It hasn't been seen since. What happened to it? We have about 4 specimens. That's all. That's the only reason we know it existed. There are 4 specimens, and no one has seen it since. A lot of people have looked for it. Is it there? Is it just hard to detect? Does it only come out every couple of years? Is it a habitat no one has ever looked at before? Is it still there? That would be wonderful. If someone rediscovered this enigmatic tiger beetle, it would be a major discovery and a major way to advance tiger beetles as well. So I hope somebody's looking for that. But in the meantime, what's happening is we are working with the IUCN to develop red list. And India is one of the first countries in which the tiger beetles have actually all been worked on to put them into categories of threatened, endangered, or of little concern. We now already have a very, very well-worked situation that we know which species in India need to be worked on the hardest, which species are most endangered. We have to keep looking at them because detectability, like with this tiger beetle here, is very important. Some species may be considered rare, and we find out they weren't really rare, they were just hard to find. So we have to keep looking. We can't just stop, we have to keep looking. What happens with the IUCN Red List, instead of each country developing its own priorities for how they identify what's threatened, what's endangered, Red List provides kind of a gold standard, a global gold standard that every country can apply its endangered list to. That means we have a standard across the world, not just country by country, but across the world. And IUCN is very, very valuable in trying to do that and make sure that we have a workable way in defining who is dangerous and who is not dangerous. So I would also encourage you to understand that our groups, we have a subgroup on tiger beetles that developed, and we have a very, very important part of that with Indian counterparts working with the IUCN on a global basis. The other advantages of a global group of specialist group on tiger beetles is there are a lot of people working on coastal tiger beetles in Spain, in Brazil, the Philippines, in India, in Korea, and Japan, and they didn't know that they had colleagues working on coastal tiger beetles in other parts of the world. Now they're all working together, sharing information, sharing techniques, sharing patterns at a global level. India is not going to be able to solve the problem by only working on Indian tiger beetles. You have to have a bigger viewpoint, a global point of view. And that's the way, again, because by doing that, we can save time, and time is so important. If we're going to conserve tiger beetles, conserve other species, conserve habitats, and manage them, we don't have time. We don't have funds. We don't have personnel. We have to work quickly together. And by doing this, using tiger beetles, using other bioindicator species, working together, citizen scientists, working with professional scientists, working at global, at regional, and local levels simultaneously, we can actually get this done. And we're not going to be able to save everything. We are working in triage quite often, but we can maximize that which can be conserved. So now, do we have any questions on this? There's a chat box. If anybody wants to do a chat box, we can do that too.
Yeah, friends, any question? Young students are also.
David said you can stop sharing your screen. There are a couple of questions. Yeah.
Yeah, please.
So
Other users do it.
it's from Subhlakshmi ma'am. The first question is, for indicator species parameters, will their prey also matter?
Okay, let's see. I can see that.
You can see it.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, fireflies. Okay. Let's see. Where's the first question?
So it's by Subhlakshmi ma'am. She asked, for indicator species parameters, will their prey also matter?
Yes. To understand a bioindicator, you have to understand every aspect of its ecology, of its behavior, to be able to know what's important to it. And if the prey can be very vital in understanding that exactly.
So the second question by her is, by economic importance, do you mean by economic services, or is just what kind of damage they cause?
Economic services. It turns out tiger beetles are not only important potentially for crop pest control, but there's a thing called biomimicry. And engineers are looking at the color patterns and the structure of the chitin of the tiger beetles to understand how can they reflect sunlight? How do their colors work? And they're actually using the way the chitin is put together to manufacture different types of coverings to mimic the tiger beetles. So biomimicry, using thousands and millions of years of evolution to understand how did that evolve, and we can get economic advantage of way tiger beetles can thermoregulate. How can they control colors? How can they reflect colors? All kinds of ways besides crop can be used economically as well.
So the next question is, do the markers, remember you were speaking about the mark and recapture method. So the question is, do the markers affect the beetle's camouflage?
That's a good question. What we've learned is we can't make the mark too big, because then the tiger beetle might be able to be seen by its own predator too well. So what we're doing in some cases, instead of marking them on the back, we're marking them underneath, on the ventral, on the underside, rather on the back. And that means that we can't just use observations to see them the next day. We have to recapture them. But it also means that their own predators probably aren't seeing them. So that's a good question. When you mark them, you can't be too obvious with the mark, because it might put that species or that individual in danger. And of course, that would make the resultant data also biased as well.
So the next question is again related to mark and recapture. So the question is, does the mark make identifying them hard? Won't it collapse?
Oh yeah, here I'm saying, okay. No, it doesn't. The elytra, the outer wings of the tiger beetles, are very hard, and we found that it makes no impact on them. You need to choose a marker like a Posa pen. It's actually an art pen. There are a lot of pens you can use, and it washes off very quickly. But this Posa pen is quite permanent and lasts maybe a couple of weeks. And apparently, as far as we can tell, has little or no effect on the physiology and behavior of the tiger beetle itself. Here's, I got one, how the angle matters with oviposition. In rice paddies, why do the females prefer 45 degrees? The larvae, if the female oviposits on a vertical cliff, it's very likely the larvae will not be able to capture any of its prey if it's trying to do a tunnel that goes into the 90 degrees, right straight back. It probably can't catch food that way. If it's flat, it may be too susceptible to flooding. 45 degrees is just a right compromise where the tiger beetle larvae can come out, build its tunnel, goes down, and not be flooded, but also be able to capture lots of prey that comes along. Is it a common behavior across paddy fields in India, or is it restricted to north? This species, the Sex punctata, luckily for us, occurs across India. It occurs everywhere in India. It's a very common species. And there's another close related species, Flavomaculata, that does much the same thing. They climb grass. There are very few tiger beetles that climb grass and eat the insects up on the grass. And these two species occur across India. So I would say this could probably be applied in any rice paddy anywhere in India. That's my guess on it. But again, we need more data. Do we have data on what all pests have tiger beetles fed on? Is this feeding behavior restricted to rice paddies only? Are the experiments done to measure the feeding potential of tiger beetles? We only have very preliminary data. The two we've worked on are the brown leafhopper and the rice stem borer. And we know there are more pests than that, and we have yet to find them. But tiger beetles tend not to choose their prey based on what species it is, but what size it is. If their mandibles are appropriate for that size prey, they'll take it, unless it's got some kind of defense chemical or something like that. But it's prey size more than species. So I would say that no matter what the pest is, if it falls within the proper prey size for that species of tiger beetle's mandibles, it will eat it. And can we get the PowerPoint? I think the PowerPoint was being recorded, so it should be available. Is that right, Sharon? Is the PowerPoint going to be available to everybody?
Yeah, this
If
webinar,
not,
the recording of this webinar will be uploaded on YouTube in a few days.
Okay, so it'll be available. Arboreal tiger beetle larvae, where can I find them? Guess what? They don't put their larvae in the soil, they put their larvae in the trees. And we have one species of Neocalaris that we found that the female oviposits on coffee bushes, on the stems of coffee bushes. And the larval tiger beetle then makes its hole in the stem of the bushes and catches prey coming to the, in this case, the coffee, but also lots of native bushes as well. So larval tiger beetles in arboreal areas eat arboreal prey as well. Any altitudinal studies carried out in northern Mount Malabar? Currently, we have started survey. This is a really important one. There are species of tiger beetles that occur at certain elevations. And what we find is that they are susceptible to altitudinal changes. With climate change, we're finding that species who are adapted to certain altitudinal ranges are moving up higher and higher as the world warms. They're specialized at certain altitudes, and especially in the Andes. I'm sure Dr. Unial can talk more about this, where you have really extreme changes in altitudes. The trouble is these tiger beetles and other species that are specialized in certain altitudes, as the habitats, as the environment changes, and they have to move up higher and higher to keep track of their habitat as it moves up higher and higher, they finally reach the top, and there's no place to go. For some, we call this the escalator to extinction, because they're moving up, and it is going to finally get to a point where the habitat can't go any higher. So that's a problem we have to look at too. But I would say talk to Dr. Unial, because he is doing altitudinal studies, and Vinita is also doing studies of altitudinal studies as well. How does habitat change result in loss of tiger beetles? Is there any measurement? For example, in Western Mass, monoculture of bamboo and teak is done by government, but how to make them aware about diversity is needed for diversity health. And there are tiger beetles that occur in these habitats, are very, very regular in these kind of habitats, again, used as bioindicators. So again, you have to get the word out. And the way you get the word out is you don't just publish your results in scientific journals. Politicians don't read scientific journals. You need to put them in newspapers. You need to put it in places that are going to be available to people who are not scientists. And there's been a good start with that already. I think there have been quite a few publications in newspapers and making things online, available online. And talk to your politicians, talk to decision makers, convince them that these are things they need to be aware of, educate them as well. And sometimes the best educators are primary school students, I've found, talking to their parents, that they can actually educate their parents who have no idea what's going on. So education in schools at a fairly early age is another way to begin this kind of change in understanding how tiger beetles are. Now the question is, tiger beetle is not listed under the Wildlife Protection Act. However, some other beetle families are included under the Act. So is it necessary for the tiger beetle species to be specifically included under the Indian Wildlife Protection Act? Okay, we have a problem here. And when a species or a group of insects is put under the Wildlife Act, they can no longer be collected. They can no longer, and there's a lot of problems with any kind of scientific research on them. So we need to look at a balance on at what point do you put these things under strict protection, and they can no longer be observed, can no longer be manipulated, they can no longer be experimented, and it slows down our understanding of what is important for that tiger beetle. So that's a fine line to walk in understanding what's going on. How does microhabitat selection influence the distribution of tiger beetle species across different ecosystems? The adults, almost all, are very restricted to 1 or 2 or 3 microhabitats. Sandy beaches, moist mud areas, boulders, logs, undergrowth bushes. but the larvae are even more restricted. So understanding the larva, which is the major part of the life cycle, adults only live 2 or 3 weeks sometimes, but the larvae will live a year, maybe more. So understanding the larvae is something we need to work on. We don't have much information on larvae yet. We need much more work on larvae. Is there any study on how the agricultural pesticides affect such neutral species directly or indirectly? No. As far as we know yet, there are no. Tiger beetles tend to be very, very sensitive. The few studies we have, they tend to be very sensitive to pesticides. That's all I can say right now. But again, we need much more work on that.
Yeah, I want to add, can permit me that way. In Himalayas, definitely there is a heavy road construction which we are observing in Himalayas, in part of Western Himalaya, basically. Because of certain regions of the security reasons, also it is a four-lane highways and every village is connected with the roads, and heavy landslides as well as the erosion of the lands. And this is one of the factors that the habitat of tiger beetle is declining. Secondly, there are things is a forest fire. Since last couple of years, this time not much because of the heavy monsoon, but last few years there's a certain heavy forest fire in the mountains, basically in the Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh, that western part of the forest area. So this is one of the reasons for the decline of the species, specifically on the tiger beetles and other associated group also. So these are the main reasons, and certainly there is a climatical change that's due to the climatical conditions and tree lines shifting toward going to up. A lot of factors in that we can need to very serious concern about it, and we need some more good study on this aspect to explore more tiger beetles of the Himalaya regions. But still, we are not having updated information like Western Ghat, sorry, tiger beetles of Western Ghat and other regions. Vinita is doing, and we already conducted, we are planning to do the study of altitudinal gradients toward the Himalayas. So these are the certain reasons for the decline of the tiger beetle species. Thank you.
And again, Dr. Unial and his group are doing some of the most forward-thinking work in India, and other people are picking it up as well too. So this is an extremely important part of understanding tiger beetles in India. There's another question here about genetic studies, and this is something. This is the door that needs to be open in India. We know that there are people working with genetics and DNA. You've got the expertise right there in India. You don't have to go outside of India. All we need is to find people who are working with DNA, working with molecules, get them interested in applying that to tiger beetles. And again, that's something that's going to have to be worked on. How do you bring them in? How do you engage them? Funding, again, funding is difficult, especially for field studies. And those are the kind of things where if you can get the politicians and decision makers who are often responsible for making funds available at those levels, state and national levels, have them understand why this is so important, not just for understanding tiger beetles, but for understanding a much wider picture of what's going on in India. So you find the people that are already working in genetic studies, are already working with molecules and DNA, get them interested in applying that to tiger beetles there in India, and we can start to advance India so fast. It's amazing. It's one thing right now that's kind of holding it back. Taxonomy, phylogeny, understanding behavior and other things as well. But if we can get through that threshold and start to incorporate DNA studies with all its other field studies, it'll explode. And our understanding of tiger beetles and how they can be applied to other parts of understanding conservation in India will be extremely advanced. Okay, which is the best habitat for finding tiger beetles? Tiger beetles occur on the coast, in rice paddies. They occur in alpine areas along pine forest trails. They occur in tropical forest trails. They occur on trees. They occur in bushes. There's hardly a habitat you can't find them on. There are some that we are discovering get all the way up to the canopy that we didn't know about. So there are lots of secrets still out there. So you may discover that there are some species of tiger beetles that only occur on steep cliffs, 100 feet, 100 meters up, that no one's ever found before. There are certainly already tiger beetles that occur only on boulders. So again, it's a wide range of things that we have a lot of understanding for, but there are still secrets out there to be discovered. And you, even though you're not a scientist, can discover these secrets too and help share what goes on with tiger beetles in India. And there's a link already applied for those who would love to be a Tiger Beetle Watch citizen science. Join up, join the group and share with it. What's exciting is we're getting pictures of tiger beetles that may be brand new species that haven't been described yet. Even without molecules, we can see that this is something very, very different. But we need specimens. We can't describe a new species just from a photo, so we have to work with that. And we need to have people in India trained to describe these species, or have ways in which we can share knowledge or workshops with other people in Europe and North America who are extremely able to work with the taxonomy and share their knowledge and develop people there in India who can do all this work as well. You might have to initially, because of time, work with people in North America and Europe to do descriptions. That means we need permits to send specimens out of the country, to have permits to collect specimens. These are all types of red tape that can interfere with advancing tiger beetles. But the more of this work that can be done within India, the faster the job, the more efficient the job, and the better the training.
I think we'll stop questions. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to WhatsApp in the group, and I'm sure I'll let Dr. David know about it. Before we conclude, thank you so much, David, sir, for such an interesting and inspiring talk. It was amazing to learn and hear from you, as always, about Indian tiger beetles and their world and your studies from you. So this session truly actually captured the spirit of World Tiger Beetle Day, and we are so happy to celebrate it in our consecutive second year. I'm sure there'll be a lot of studies and
Okay, well, again, thank you all. I loved working in India. I love making all my friends in India, and just to see how fast you people are picking up on these tiger beetles and moving ahead, it is great. So thank you all, and I hope you all see more tiger beetles tomorrow.
thank you so much,
thank you.
David, sir, and thank
Thank
you.
you so much, sir.
Thank
All who
you
joined us
everyone
today to
for
celebrate.
attending this
Presentation will
interesting
be
session.
put up in YouTube.
And yeah, I wish all the students and our young researcher working on interest on tiger beetle entomology also. So we'll see you again soon, and we'll interact with new ideas and new field surveys we'll conduct it. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so
Happy
much.
birthday, sir.
Okay, bye-bye.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sarah, for arranging all the things nicely.
No worries, sir, as always. Thank